I opened the envelope thinking it was a birthday card, but instead, it was a bill. A bill. For staying in my own house. They charged me rent, my own children. I built that house with my late husband brick by brick. Every corner held memories. First, steps, Christmas dinners, late-night stories. And now they were charging me to live in it, like a stranger renting a room on Airbnb. I didn't understand at first. I thought maybe it was a mistake, but no. My daughter-in-law said, "We can't afford to let you live here for free anymore. Times are tough." They even wrote up a rental agreement. I felt a tightness in my chest, not just from the shock, but from the betrayal. I raised them with everything I had. I sacrificed vacations, comfort, even my retirement savings so they could go to college, start families, live better than I ever did. And now they wanted me to pay to be part of the very life I gave them? I sat in the room I used to call my sanctuary and stared at that piece of paper. They thought I'd just roll over. They didn't know who they were dealing with. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I called a lawyer. And I made a choice they never saw coming. My name is Margaret Lowell. I'm 72 years old, a mother of 3, a grandmother of 6, and a widow of 35 years. I'm not a rich woman, not in the way banks measure wealth, but my life was full of riches that money couldn't buy, or so I thought. I was 37 when my husband Thomas and I bought the small 2-story house just outside Lansing, Michigan. He was a mechanic, and I worked as a school secretary. We didn't have much, but we had love, and we had dreams. The house was our biggest investment, but also our proudest accomplishment. Every paycheck we earned, we put a little toward making it a home, not just a structure, but a place filled with warmth, safety, and tradition. Our 3 children, David, Samuel, and little Emily, grew up in those walls. They carved their names into the tree out back. They fought over who got the biggest slice of pie. They fell asleep to bedtime stories and woke up to the smell of pancakes. We never had cable, TV, but we had snowball fights, family puzzles, and bonfires in the backyard. I still remember their muddy boots by the door, the laughter echoing in the hallway, and how they'd all crawl into our bed when storms scared them at night. Thomas passed away when I was 58. Heart failure. Sudden. One minute he was in the garage, humming a Beatles tune. The next I was calling 911 with shaking hands. Losing him felt like the earth cracked open beneath me, but I held on. For the kids. For the grandkids, for the home we built together. After his passing, the kids started visiting more often. At first, it warmed my heart. David would come by, on Sundays. Emily called every morning. Samuel helped me fix the fence and mow the lawn. I thought it was love, or grief maybe, but slowly, things shifted. David lost his job. Samuel's wife started whispering around corners. Emily, my sweet baby girl, married a man who could sell you your own shoes and convince you to say thank you. I noticed little things disappearing. From the house, an old watch of Thomas's, my mother's antique vase. They claimed they were taking care of things, or keeping them safe. Then came the money requests. A couple hundred for a car repair, a little loan to float a mortgage payment, help with college tuition for the grandkids. I gave freely. I wanted to be the kind of mother who gave without keeping score. But when the requests turned into expectations, I started to feel something shift deep inside me, like the warm soil of family had begun to rot. They stopped asking and started demanding. When I hesitated, they'd guilt me. "Mom, you always said family came first." Or worse, "Do you want your grandkids to suffer?" I never saw the full picture until last year. That's when David suggested I let him manage my finances. To make things easier for me, he said. I agreed. I was tired. I didn't want to argue. I trusted him. But what I didn't know was that he and his wife had put the house under his name, legally transferred it behind my back while handling some paperwork. The deed, the property tax, everything. I had no clue what I'd signed. I found out the hard way. It was a cold February morning when I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, neatly typed, with a rental agreement and an invoice for backdated rent, nearly $4,800, for my own home. At first I thought it was a joke. Then I thought maybe David had lost his mind. But when I called him, his wife answered. "Hi, Margaret," she said sweetly, like she was talking to a distant neighbor. "We were wondering when you'd get that. Things are tight, and it's only fair everyone contributes." Fair. That word hit like ice water. This was the same woman who never worked a day in her life, who wore designer shoes while asking me for help with utility bills. The same woman who'd smirked when I baked cookies instead of buying store-bought ones for the kids. Now she wanted rent. I asked her to put David on the phone. She laughed. "He's busy. Just read the letter. We expect your payment by the 1st. That's when I realized I wasn't their mother anymore. I was a burden, a liability, a way to make money. I cried that night, but not for me, for the family I thought I had, for the years I gave, the holidays I hosted, the birthdays I never missed. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold in my hands, and I thought about every sacrifice I'd made. I had poured everything into them. I never remarried. I never traveled. I lived simply so they could live well. And now, they wanted me to pay rent for the life I gave them, but they made one mistake. They underestimated me. You see, what they didn't know, what I never told anyone, was that Thomas and I had another property, a small duplex outside Grand Rapids. Bought it in cash during our early years and kept it under a trust in my name only. We used the rent from it to pad our savings in secret. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and now it was time to use it. Because, while they were busy scheming, I was getting legal advice. And I learned something important. When someone takes a house from you unfairly, even if they're family, you don't have to just accept it. You can fight, and I did. After the bill arrived, everything changed. There was no more pretending, no more polite smiles, no more illusion that this was still my home. David and his wife Rachel made it painfully clear I was now a guest in what used to be my house. And not just a guest, but an unwanted one. They started with little things, almost as if they wanted to break me down slowly. One day, I noticed that my favorite armchair, the one I sat in to knit, sip tea, and watch the birds, was missing. "Oh, we moved it to the basement," Rachel said casually when I asked. "The new couch didn't match it. Hope you don't mind." I did mind, but I said nothing. Then it was the photos. Bit by bit, the pictures of Thomas and I were taken down and replaced with framed prints of David's kids, David's wedding, David's vacations. My history was disappearing from the walls, and then came the chores. Rachel began to forget things. The laundry would pile up, dishes left in the sink, toys everywhere. And when I'd clean up, out of habit, she'd thank me sweetly. "You're such a help, Margaret. I don't know how we'd manage without you." It wasn't a compliment, it was conditioning. I was becoming the live-in maid, the unpaid housekeeper, the invisible old woman who should just be grateful to have a roof over her head. At dinner, I was the last one served if there was enough left. Sometimes they forgot to call me altogether. The first time it happened, I thought it was a mistake, but then it became routine. One night, they had friends over for a barbecue. I smelled the food from upstairs and came down, thinking I'd help, or at least say hello. Rachel spotted me and froze. "Oh, we didn't think you'd want to join," she said with that fake smile. "It's mostly just our crowd, their crowd." I stood there blinking at the people laughing on the patio, strangers in my backyard, using my grill, drinking from the glasses Thomas and I picked out for our anniversary. No one invited me to sit. No one offered a plate. I turned around and went back upstairs. That night, I ate a cold bowl of cereal alone in the laundry room. Even Emily, my sweet girl, started pulling away. Her husband, Justin, always had a way of twisting things. He'd tell her things like, "Your mom is so lucky David is taking care of her. Imagine if she had no one. You should be more grateful." She started calling. Less. When I asked if I could visit her and the grandkids, she said they were busy or traveling. I saw her on Facebook at the local zoo that same week. Samuel, Well, he stayed quiet. He always had. But he stopped coming around. He used to visit me every Sunday, help me with the garden. Now he sent quick texts, usually short and robotic. "Hope you're good, Mom. Talk soon." I wasn't stupid. I could see what was happening. Rachel was pulling the strings. David was too spineless to say no, and the rest of them just went along with it, because it was easier to ignore me than to stand up to her. It all came to a head on Thanksgiving. I had cooked every Thanksgiving dinner for over 40 years. Even the year Thomas died, I managed to pull together a meal because it mattered to me, because it was family, because it was ours. But this year, Rachel said she wanted to host. She told me not to worry about anything. "Just relax," she said. I didn't argue. I waited all morning to be called down. No one came. I could hear music playing and laughter, plates clinking. Around 1 p.m., I finally went downstairs. They were already seated, eating. Emily and Samuel were there, their spouses, the grandkids, all of them crowded around the table I had polished with lemon oil just 2 days before. Rachel looked up, startled. "Oh, did no one tell you? We thought you'd prefer to stay upstairs and rest." I stood there trembling. My own children wouldn't even meet my eyes. They had eaten without me, celebrated without me. I wasn't even a guest anymore. I was a shadow. Later that night, Rachel left a paper plate covered in foil on the stairs with a sticky note. "Saved you some. Happy Thanksgiving." That was the moment something inside me cracked. I didn't eat the food. I didn't cry either. Not anymore. I started packing my things, quietly. A sweater here, a photo album there. I stashed them in trash bags and hid them in the back of my car. Every time they went out, I moved a little more. They never noticed. One day, I overheard Rachel talking to her friend on the phone in the kitchen. "We're going to renovate the upstairs once she's out. David said legally we only have to give her 30 days notice. I can't wait. I'm sick of her creeping around like a ghost." That was it. That was the final betrayal. Not only had they tricked me out of my home, they were planning to kick me out entirely. Like trash. Like I didn't matter. But what they didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd already found a lawyer. A quiet, clever woman named Claire who specialized in elder abuse and property disputes. She told me I had options, more than I realized. You see, that trust Thomas and I had created all those years ago, the one that owned the duplex in Grand Rapids, it also contained a clause, a fallback, a safety net. The trust had legal language, stating that if I was ever made housing insecure by family, I could use the income and equity from the duplex to buy or reclaim property. I could fund litigation, I could even sue for damages, and I planned to. But first, I wanted them to feel what I felt. I wanted them to know what it's like to be blindsided. So I waited. Quietly. Patiently. Like they trained me to do. I played the role of the meek grandmother, the burden, the passive shadow. And then, one Monday morning, I slipped 3 envelopes under 3 doors. Each was labeled with their name. Inside was an official notice to vacate, served legally through the lawyer, with a court date to follow if they refused. They were confused, of course. Angry. Rachel stormed into my room screaming, waving the paper. "You can't evict us. This is our house." "No," I said, standing tall. "It was mine. And you took it. Now I'm taking it back." They threatened. They cried. They begged. But I didn't flinch. I had found my voice again. And I was finally using it. It was Rachel's birthday party that made everything unravel for good. The house was packed. Balloons, catered food, music playing loud enough to shake the windows. I hadn't been invited to the planning. I hadn't been asked to help. I didn't even know half the guests. I stayed upstairs most of the day reading in silence. I tried to tell myself I didn't care, but deep down I knew I wasn't reading. I was waiting. Waiting for someone to call me down, offer me a plate, ask if I was okay. Just one of them. No one did. Around 5 p.m., I heard giggling outside my door, then a sharp click. I stood, walked to the knob and tried to turn it. Locked. I tried again. The door wouldn't budge. I knocked, gently, at first. Then louder. No answer. I tapped my phone. No signal. Rachel had upgraded the Wi-Fi the month before and conveniently left me off the new password. I was disconnected from everything. After a few more minutes of knocking and calling out, I sat down on the bed. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe one of the kids was playing. But an hour passed. Then 2. The music downstairs kept playing. I could hear them singing Happy Birthday. I could smell the roast chicken, the cinnamon cake I used to bake for her before she could afford better. And still, no one came. The hallway light under my door went dark. They weren't coming. I didn't cry at first. I just sat there, numb. I looked around the small, cluttered room, once my bedroom, now a storage space they let me sleep in. There was a mirror on the dresser across from the bed. I stared at my reflection, the lines on my face, the grief in my eyes. I didn't see a mother. I didn't even see a person. I saw what they must have seen. Something in the way. Something to be managed, moved, removed. When they finally unlocked the door the next morning, Rachel acted surprised. "Oh, I didn't know it was locked. You should have called someone." I didn't answer her, because I knew the truth. They locked me in, to keep me out. I had become their shame, their secret, the old woman who lived upstairs like some unwanted relic. It wasn't long after that when the final betrayal came. The one I never expected. Emily was getting married. My baby girl. She hadn't told me. I found out from a Facebook post. A photo of her holding her engagement ring, surrounded by friends with the caption, "Can't wait to marry my best friend. Bride, Han finally." I sat in the kitchen with the phone in my hand, reading the caption over and over. No call, no card, no visit. I waited 3 days before I asked her about it. She came by to drop something off and I confronted her gently. "Emmy, you're getting married?" She looked startled, then guilty. "Oh, yeah, I meant to tell you, Mom. It's just been hectic." "You meant to tell me?" "Well," Rachel said, "maybe it would be better if we kept things simple. You know how tense things can get at family events." I stared at her. "So, I'm not invited?" She hesitated. "It's just going to be really small, just friends, just our generation." I nodded slowly. "Not even your brothers?" "They'll understand. It's not personal." But it was personal. It was a clean cut. The final slice. The kind that doesn't bleed right away but sinks deeper with time. I didn't go back upstairs. I didn't go to bed. I sat in the garage that night, Thomas's garage. His old tools still hung on the pegboard, covered in dust. I ran my fingers across the handle of his favorite wrench and let the tears come. For the first time in months, I let it all go. I sobbed like a woman who had lost more than a home. Because I had. I'd lost the family I built, the children I raised, the future I believed in. It wasn't about the house anymore. It wasn't even about the betrayal. It was the realization that the love I gave wasn't returned, and maybe it never had been. When the tears finally dried, I felt nothing. Not rage, not revenge, just stillness. I made a cup of tea and sat by the window until dawn. That morning, Rachel found me still sitting there. "You scared us," she said flatly. "You didn't come in last night." "I was just thinking," I said. "Thinking about what?" I looked her in the eyes and smiled. "About how much things have changed." She laughed nervously. "Well, things always change. That's life. But this time, I wasn't talking about time. I was talking about me. That was the point of no return. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I finally realized they were never going to stop hurting me. They thought I was broken. They thought I was weak, too old to stand up for myself. They thought I had nowhere else to go, that I was lucky to be allowed to stay under their roof, even if it meant being ignored, disrespected, and locked away like some aging inconvenience. But I had never been helpless. I had just been quiet. there's a difference. The same woman who raised 3 children on one salary while working 2 jobs, one during the day and one cleaning offices at night, hadn't just been surviving all these years. She'd been planning, preparing, protecting everything Thomas and I had built, including the house. They didn't know this, of course. Rachel thought she was clever, getting David to pressure me into signing a temporary ownership transfer when I moved in, pretending it was for my protection. She didn't realize I never actually signed the final version. I kept the unsigned documents neatly tucked in my filing cabinet and let them believe the lie. In truth, the house had been placed in a living trust years ago, one Thomas and I created after his first stroke. The house was never fully in David's name, not legally. It was owned by the trust, and as the trustee, I still had full rights. Rachel could decorate, rearrange, and throw parties, but she couldn't change the deed. She couldn't sell. And she definitely couldn't evict me. But they didn't know that. And I didn't correct them. Because I needed time. Time to gather evidence. Time to build my case. Time to watch them bury themselves. I began saving everything. Every rude text, every voicemail, every grocery receipt I paid for without thanks. I took photos of the locked door. I journaled daily, noting every time they excluded me from meals or family events. When Emily confirmed that Rachel told her not to invite me to the wedding, I took a screenshot of that message too. I also went to the bank. The money Thomas and I had saved was more than they thought. Years of frugality, smart investing, a pension, Social Security, and a quiet little duplex in Grand Rapids that Thomas bought back in 1992 for $40,000, now worth 10 times that. I wasn't rich, but I wasn't stuck either. I hired a lawyer. Her name was Claire Martinez. Young, sharp, and fiery. She specialized in elder rights and estate protection, and when I told her my story, she didn't blink. "You're not the first," she said, "but you can be the one who pushes back." She reviewed the trust, the property records, the so-called bill they sent me to cover expenses. She laughed out loud when she saw it. "They invoiced you for food and toilet paper in your own house," she said. "We're going to tear them apart." She drafted documents quietly. A notice to vacate, legal and binding. An affidavit establishing my continued legal residence. A petition to reclaim sole management of the trust based on undue influence and elder abuse. And just for fun, a cease and desist letter warning Rachel against interfering in my legal affairs, with a not-so-subtle reminder that impersonating a property owner was a felony. I didn't serve them right away. No, I waited, because as much as I wanted justice, I needed them to show their true selves completely. I needed my children, my real children, to see who Rachel really was. And so I waited. I pretended to be smaller, quieter, even a bit confused. I acted like I didn't understand how online banking worked, like I didn't know what Venmo was. I even asked Rachel how to Google things just to see her smirk and roll her eyes. And while she laughed at me behind my back, I had a new wireless printer installed in my bedroom. Everything they sent me, I printed. Every bill, every grocery list with prices highlighted, every text demanding that I pull my weight or start buying your own shampoo. All of it went into a manila folder marked evidence. I even placed a nanny cam in the hallway. Yes, a nanny cam. I bought it online using a prepaid Visa card and had it shipped to my friend Denise's house across town. She dropped it off during her weekly check-in, which Rachel conveniently always left the house for. The camera looked like a simple nightlight, but it captured everything. Every eye roll, every snide comment about old people being useless. Every time Rachel told the grandkids not to bother Grandma because she's in one of her moods. The worst part? It didn't even feel like spying. It felt like survival. Each day, I added to my collection. Each night, I reviewed the footage and jotted notes. I wasn't looking for drama, I was collecting proof. And the more I saw, the more resolute I became. I wasn't doing this just for me anymore. I was doing this for every older parent who had been discarded, talked down to, or made to feel like they were less than human, just because they grew slower or didn't understand TikTok. I was doing this for the mother in my support group who had been put in a nursing home without consent, for the widow in church who had to sue her own daughter just to get her jewelry back, and most of all, I was doing it for Thomas. Because if he had seen what they were doing to me, his Maggie, his forever girl, he would have raised hell. I owed it to him to raise it now. It happened on a Sunday, sunny, bright, and warm. One of those rare Michigan days that feels like a blessing. Emily's bridal shower was in full swing. Held right in the backyard of my house, of course. White folding chairs lined up under a rented tent, pink and gold balloons. A drink station with mimosa bar written in cursive on a chalkboard. People I didn't recognize filled the space. Friends from college, distant cousins, a few of Rachel's friends who always spoke too loudly and smiled too wide. I wasn't invited. Rachel had made that very clear. "It's just younger people," she said, her voice full of syrup. "You wouldn't really enjoy it. All that noise, you know? But I had something to deliver, and it couldn't wait. I put on the same dress I wore to Thomas's retirement dinner, navy blue with pearl buttons, and brushed my hair back neatly. I looked in the mirror and whispered, 'It's time.' Then I picked up the manila envelope I had kept hidden under my bed for weeks, and I walked outside. The conversations died almost instantly. Some of the younger guests just smiled awkwardly, unsure of who I even was. Others, those who knew exactly who I was, shifted uncomfortably, watching Rachel out of the corners of their eyes. Rachel spotted me from across the lawn, standing near the dessert table, plate in hand. Her smile faltered. "Mom, what are you doing out here?" she asked, voice tight but still trying to sound pleasant. "I came to give Emily a gift," I said softly. "Oh. Well, maybe just wait inside, and we'll bring her to you after." "No," I said. "Now is fine." Emily looked surprised but polite. "Hi, Mom," she said, hesitating. "That's sweet of you." I walked over, placed the envelope in her hands, and smiled. "This is for you," I said. "But it's not just for your wedding. It's something I think everyone here should hear." Rachel moved closer, suddenly nervous. "What is this?" Claire, my attorney, stepped forward from the back of the tent. She had arrived minutes before me, unnoticed. She wore a gray blazer and calm confidence. She gave me a nod. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said firmly, projecting her voice, "my name is Claire Martinez. I'm here today on behalf of Margaret Thomas, homeowner, trustee, and legal resident of this property. Effective immediately, she is reclaiming her home, her dignity, and her rights." A stunned silence rippled across the yard. Rachel let out a short, breathless laugh. "I'm sorry, what?" I turned to her slowly. "You've been living in my house, Rachel. Not yours, not David's. Mine. The trust never transferred. The paperwork you thought I signed, it was never finalized. You've been a guest here. A disrespectful one." Claire held up a second folder. "This is a notice to vacate. You and David have 30 days to remove yourselves and your belongings from this property. Failure to comply will result in legal action." People were staring. Now, cameras coming out, phones quietly recording. Rachel's face was a frozen mask of disbelief. "You can't be serious," she spat. "Oh, I'm serious," I said. "And so is the court. The evidence we've gathered shows financial abuse, emotional neglect, and coercion. You locked me in my own room, Rachel. You billed me to sleep under my own roof. And you made sure everyone treated me like an afterthought." David came outside then, confused by the commotion. Claire handed him a copy of the legal documents. He scanned the page, his face paling. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "You're overreacting." "No," I said, calm and measured. "I'm reacting just enough." Emily looked down at her envelope, hands trembling. Inside wasn't money. It was a letter, from me, and a check. Not for her wedding, but for her future, if she chose a better path. "I didn't leave you out of my life, Emmy," I said gently. "You left me, but it's not too late to come back. Not as a daughter who takes, but as one who respects." The guests were shifting now. Whispers, gasps, A few people walked away from Rachel's side entirely, pretending to refill drinks. Just to escape the tension, Claire continued. We've also filed a formal complaint with the County Elder Protection Agency. This case may become part of a larger investigation if needed, but Margaret has chosen, for now, to resolve this civilly. Rachel looked like she wanted to scream, but she didn't. Not with so many eyes on her, not with a lawyer standing at her shoulder and a dozen phones pointed her way. Instead, she just whispered, "How long have you been planning this?" "Since the day you locked me in my room," I said. "Since the day you made me feel like a burden in my own house." I stepped forward, my voice low but clear. "You forgot who I was, Rachel. I'm not weak. I'm not done. And I'm not leaving." Emily, now crying softly, opened the letter. She didn't speak. But she didn't defend Rachel either. That said everything. By the time I returned to the house, the backyard had emptied by half. Claire stayed to answer questions and hand out documents. Rachel stormed off, red-faced, dragging David behind her. No one rushed to stop them. I sat in the living room, quietly sipping tea. For the first time in years, it felt like home again. Not because the house had changed, but because I had. It didn't take long for the fallout to begin. By Monday morning, the video from the bridal shower had made its way online, first through a cousin's Instagram story, then shared to Facebook, and eventually, someone uploaded the whole confrontation to YouTube. The title? Grandma Evicts Her Own Son and Daughter-in-Law. During bridal shower, it went viral. The comments poured in. Queen energy. She's the real boss. Let this be a lesson. Never bite the hand that raised you. Rachel's circle, the friends who had once gushed about her home decor and Pinterest boards, distanced themselves almost overnight. No one wanted to be seen siding with someone who had thrown an elderly woman into a locked room and charged her rent in her own home. The local church quietly rescinded Rachel's spot on the event committee. The school where David volunteered part-time asked him not to return. Their social currency? Gone. But that was just the beginning. David called first. He didn't even try to fake warmth. "Mom," he said flatly, "this is ruining our lives." "Your actions ruined your life," I said. "I'm just not protecting you from the consequences anymore." He went quiet for a beat, then said the words I had waited months, maybe years to hear. "I'm sorry." And for once I didn't rush to forgive. "I appreciate that," I replied. "But you're not just apologizing to me. You're apologizing to your children, to your father's memory, to the woman who gave up everything so you could have a college education and a clean bed every night." He tried to blame Rachel, claimed she had pressured him, manipulated him, twisted things, and maybe she had. But I reminded him, "You still let her." He didn't argue. They moved out within 3 weeks. Quietly. No shouting, no drama, just boxes and garbage bags loaded into a U-Haul on a gray Wednesday morning. I watched from the porch. Rachel never looked up. David nodded once as they pulled away. They ended up renting a small apartment on the edge of town. I heard from Denise that they had to sell one of the cars. David's business, which Rachel had helped run part-time, took a hit when their reputation soured. Clients backed out. Referrals dried up. Karma, some would say. But I didn't gloat. I just breathed. For the first time in years, my home was mine again. I repainted the guest room, opened all the windows, and replaced the dull gray curtains with something light and floral. I donated Rachel's modern furniture and brought out the old oak rocking chair Thomas loved. I even unpacked his Navy photo and put it back above the mantel where it belonged. Emily came by a few weeks later. She stood at the door with teary eyes and a gift in her hands, a framed picture of me and her as a toddler, baking cookies in the old kitchen. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner," she whispered. "I knew something was wrong, I just didn't know how to face it." I pulled her into a hug. "You faced it," I said. "That's what matters." She visits more often, now, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with updates about the wedding she's now planning on a much smaller scale. And without Rachel's help, she even asked if I'd walk her down the aisle. "I know it's not traditional," she said, but you're the strongest person I know." That was the first time in a long while I cried. Not out of sadness, but because someone saw me again, truly saw me. As more time passed, the rest of the family slowly reached out. Some apologized genuinely. Others awkwardly tried to smooth things over without ever acknowledging what they had allowed to happen. I accepted what felt sincere, but I didn't reopen old doors out of obligation. That was the biggest change in me. I no longer measured my worth by how much others needed me, or how much I could endure in silence. I used to think being strong meant never saying anything, never pushing back. But I realize now, strength can also mean standing tall, saying enough, and reclaiming your space, your peace, and your name. I still volunteer at the community center. I started a small support group for older adults facing housing insecurity and family abuse. We meet on Tuesdays, drink coffee, and tell our stories, not with shame, but with pride. One woman told me, "You gave me the courage to say no to my son." I moved out and into a senior co-op. It's not big, but I sleep better. That means more to me than any apology ever could. My home is quiet now, peaceful, safe. No more locked doors. No more invoices for shampoo. Just me, my books, my garden, and the ghost of Thomas smiling at how it all turned out. I keep the eviction notice framed in my study, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that I was never a burden. I was a backbone, and it was time they finally recognized it. Some endings don't come with grand fireworks or loud applause. Some just settle into a quiet kind of peace. After everything, after the betrayal, the humiliation, and the eviction, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness. Not the kind that comes from loneliness, but the kind that whispers, "You're safe now." Emily kept visiting. At first once a week, then more often. She helped me trim the rose bushes in the backyard. She learned to make her grandfather's cinnamon bread from scratch, just like we used to. And eventually, she brought someone with her, a kind, soft-spoken man named Marcus, who always asked if I needed anything before even saying hello. They'd sit across from me on the porch swing, sharing plans about their modest new wedding. No fancy venues, no ice sculptures or signature cocktails, just love, vows, and family, real family. When Emily asked if she could say her I do's under the maple tree in our backyard, I didn't hesitate. I said yes, and this time it was my invitation list, my terms, my house. That moment, the day she walked barefoot across the lawn in a simple white dress, tears in her eyes and a smile just for me, that was the redemption. I didn't need revenge anymore. I had healing. As the months passed, I made a decision, one I had been sitting with quietly. I called Claire, my lawyer, and revised the trust. I left most of the estate to a fund that supports elderly individuals escaping abusive or manipulative living situations, housing, legal aid, transportation, even emotional support. I named it the Backbone Fund. Not for me, but for anyone who had ever been made to feel like their life was no longer their own. I gave Emily her share. But I made her promise something in return. Use it to build, not to impress. And always remember where you came from, and who stood by you when others didn't. She nodded through tears. I will, Grandma, I swear. As for the rest of my family, some faded away. Some lingered around the edges offering surface-level apologies, and I accepted the ones I could, but I stopped living for their approval. That, I've learned, is one of life's hardest lessons. Just because someone is family doesn't mean they're safe, and just because you love someone doesn't mean you must suffer for them. Love should never feel like a transaction, or a weight, or a bill taped to your bedroom door. I look back now and realize I never wanted revenge. I wanted respect. I wanted someone to look me in the eye and see not a burden, but a woman who raised children, buried a husband, kept a home, and never once asked for more than a little kindness in return. I don't regret standing up for myself, but I do wish I had done it sooner, because too many of us, especially as we get older, are taught to shrink, to stay quiet, to avoid confrontation for the sake of peace. But peace built on silence is just a pretty cage. Real peace comes when you finally say, no more, not with rage, not with screaming, just calm, unwavering truth. If you're watching this, and you've ever felt pushed aside, if you've ever been made to feel small, irrelevant, or inconvenient in your own home, I hope you remember this. You are not a burden. You are not too much. You are not powerless. You are someone's roots. You are someone's backbone. And sometimes the quietest strength makes the loudest statement. So plant your feet, speak your truth, and don't be afraid to evict the people who forgot your worth. Because your house, whether it's a physical space or your heart, is yours, and no one has the right to take it from you, not without a fight, and not without remembering who built it in the first place. What would you have done if your own children turned their backs on you? Do you think I went too far, or was it finally time they learned a lesson? Share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Someone out there needs to hear this today. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's someone you love. Stand up. Speak out. Stay strong.